Hey y'all, it is Hope here at Crafty Hope, and welcome. I am today going to share with y'all my index card a day, or ICADs, for days 7, 8, and 9. This is a challenge that comes each year from Tammy Garcia. You can find her as Daisy Yellow Art online. That's her website. She's also Gypsy999 on Instagram, but her ICAD Instagram handle is index card a day. I will have all those links below. In addition, Tammy has daily themes and weekly prompts to help you with your ICAD challenge, and really, you don't have to use those. The whole purpose of this challenge is just to do some daily art on an index card, whether it is a 3x5 or 4x6. That's as large as she thinks they need to be. In addition to Tammy's challenge, my friend Nina Fickett has some prompts that she calls Mixed Media ICAD. The hashtag she has is hashtag MMICAD 2024. Anyway, I'll at least have links to Tammy and Nina below for you to figure that out, to go explore and fall into the world of ICAD, because it is, I'm not sure how many years Tammy has had this challenge going on, but I have been doing it for quite a few of them. I don't even know. So anyway, this is day 7 here. And I will tell you that some days I use the prompts and some days I do not. And the two prompts today, the Daisy Yellow prompt from Tammy is lavender, and Nina's prompt, the Mixed Media ICAD prompt, is Joker. I only use the lavender prompt. So you could see, maybe you saw it. Right there at the beginning, I showed you a bottle of folk art paint that I found in my stash, just some craft paint that is lavender. It says lavender on it. So I was like, hey, I can maybe use that. In addition, you see I put a bunch of collage on this card, and the pieces I'm adding here there's some kind of Asian paper decorated. They've got metallics in them. My friend Ginger sent me those from Japan, so I'm guessing they're Japanese papers. But I'm just using scraps of those because they've got a little bit of lavender and some pink in there, and I thought that would be fun in the background. In addition, this is a tea bag here that probably had some kind of hibiscus tea in it, because it's got that pinky red lavendery color on it, so kind of a violety color that I thought, that kind of goes with it. I think I'm going to add another piece in a minute. I am trimming that down. You can see for this card, I just used an Uhu glue stick. It was quick and easy. I kind of been varying this year between using my Uhu glue stick and using my fluid matte medium, so it just depends on how messy I want to get, I suppose. So I have glued that all down and trimmed my card, and for some reason I have sped this up a whole lot. And then I have that's that lavender paint there, and I'm just using a paintbrush and I'm making some marks. That is a tiny flat brush there that I thought would be fun to make marks with, and these are marks, and if you've seen my other videos and you watch any of these, you'll see they're marks I generally make. So they're like little groups of marks. And then I've got a basic mechanical pencil, adding some scribbles. And for some reason, I decided to scrape that card, and it smeared some of the lavender paint, which isn't a huge deal. I was like, okay, well, that happened. I am coming back in with a Stabilo All pencil. That is a water-soluble pencil. It's called an all pencil because it will write on practically any surface. Glass, plastics, paper, metal, all kinds of surfaces. So, but they're water-soluble. As you can see, I activated that and they got a little bleedy and brighter. I'm going to add a few more marks here. I'm just going around some of those kind of rectangular marks that I did on there, and use basic water to activate it. Now I've got some Liquitex Professionals white gesso and a small brayer from Ranger, and I put the gesso right on my desk, and I'm picking up just a little bit of it and going over that card. I wasn't super happy with how it was feeling. The violet felt like it was in my face. All of the bits of collage felt like they were very separate, and this technique of going over it a little bit adds some, makes it more cohesive. I'll say cohesive a lot because that's how I want my work to kind of feel. I've got a dropper bottle there with some walnut ink, I don't know what you call it, that I splattered on the card and dried it for the most part, but this will reconstitute. Can stay water reactive. So even though I got it dry, I've got my distress sprayer in there and I've sprayed it to activate some of that and move it around, and then I'm going to dry it again. And it's feeling a little bit more like me now. That's what I was concerned about with the lavender prompt, because I don't tend to put a whole lot of color in my art, but I try to mix it up and throw it in there and see what I can do with it. So yeah, so far I'm feeling pretty good because I've got the white and I've got that like brownie coffee stain on there, and that feels pretty good. And I needed a pop of something, so I'm going through my fabric there. I find that fabric adds a lot of texture, and that black piece of fabric really like stood out. So I'm going to trim it down to a good size to just go across the card. And then I've got a bit of some really textured lace, and I cannot tell you where that came from. I don't know. Somebody may have sent it to me. I could have thrifted it. I'm not real sure, but it's got some great texture on it. So I'm going to cut it down about the same size as that. Actually, I think it's a little bit bigger than that piece of black fabric. And I don't even know where that black fabric came from. It's just in that bin of fabric scraps. So and I'm going to look at this, and I really like that you can see the texture of that lace on top of that black. So that's really what I was going with there. And I just stuck that down with my Uhu, and I'll do the same thing. I'm basically tacking these pieces down. So yeah, I'm trying to decide. I wanted something a little bit more, and I decided that the idea of having somebody's eyes peeking up over the top of that black strip would be really neat. So I've got these yearbook photos here, and you can see I'm trimming them down just about nose level. And I'm going to have them, peeking up over that strip of black. And I don't know why, it just felt right. It felt like if I'm going to have that strip of black there, I need to have something coming out from it. And the idea of these ladies just kind of like peeking out there just seemed perfect. And again, sticking it down with my Uhu glue stick, I do real quick grab a ink blender with some walnut stain distress ink on it, and just to give it a little age and kind of go with the walnut ink crystal ink that's on there. And again, I will use my Uhu glue stick to stick that lace down. I'm going to put it... Oh no, I decided I needed some splatters, and I'm trying to, not sure. Oh, I've got some black acrylic ink there that I'm going to water down and grab, again, my fan brush and add some black. I felt like the background needed to have some black on it, just like that strip. So you can see I protected my ladies and with another piece of paper. And then I'm going to dry it. And now I'm going to stick that bit of lace down, I think. Oh my goodness, y'all. I'm running behind on these ICADs. I hope you will forgive me, but I'm kind of taking my time with getting them out, just like I am with the 100-day project. If you haven't seen that, I have a whole playlist of some of the projects I did during the 100-day project. Some of them are things like art journal pages and stuff, but some of them are more intensive projects. So, all right, you saw I stuck that down with the Uhu glue stick, and I decided I wanted to add some stitching for a couple reasons. One, I thought I could bring that lavender color back in with some stitches as well. It would help secure that lace a little bit more because all I've got is the glue stick there. So I've sped this up a little bit so you don't have to watch, and all I'm really doing is coming up in one place and making sure I go over the top of the lace. Now this lavender embroidery floss is not popping as much as I would hope it would on here, which isn't a big deal because I've got lavender on there, and now this is more secure on the card. But I'm also going to stick a sticker down in just a minute that's going to cover up almost all of these stitches. So it is what it is. I work very intuitively when it comes to these ICADs, and I never know exactly what direction I'm taking, so I kind of go with it. So I'm going to get to the end of this and tie it off on the back. And I don't know if you could see that I was kind of using the surface of my desk as well to help me push that needle in some places through the card. Now, just like I inked up the edges of that yearbook page, I'm going to ink up the edges of the whole card. This to me is like a finishing touch. It frames it up. I don't know. And I'm not finished. It just, I don't know, it gives it the right feel to it. So I knew from there I needed a sentiment. I pulled out these Art by Marlene stickers. I really like the idea of the craft color of that. And so I stick that down. I took a while to find one that I liked, and this one says your vibe attracts your tribe. So I feel like the ladies kind of peeking there are kind of like your wingmen, your ladies. They've got your back. They're behind you. Does that make sense? They're your tribe. They're there for you. So I'm going to give you a quick look at this before we get to day 8, and I will have more pictures of this card at the end. For day 8, the Daisy Yellow prompt, if you saw that, was wave, and the mixed media ICAD prompt was tissue paper. Now, I just couldn't think of a way to use wave, but I knew that tissue paper would be fairly easy. I've got tons of different types in my stash, but first I wanted to get some collage down. So once again, I'm using that Uhu glue stick, and I'm using a bit, you can see that's a larger piece of just matte paper. I knew that since I was using tissue paper, I just kind of wanted something in the background, because when I put tissue paper over the top, for the most part, it's going to be kind of transparent. So I just wanted to cover my card and have a bit of a base for the tissue paper to sit on. And I'm working out of my scrap box. It's kind of one of my handy dandy favorite things to turn to. And collage in general for me is how I start so much stuff. It covers the page. I don't know. It's like the way that I get started. So before you can see I pulled out a piece of tissue paper, but was like, oh no, I want to add some color to this. So I've got this is just a basic from the craft store palette of watercolors. I'm putting down some blue and I think some yellow. Yep. I don't know why. It just feels right. I work super intuitively when it comes with this. I had no idea what I was going to do with this. So I'm going to try that watercolor real quick and then come in with that fluid matte medium and my cosmetic facial spreader thing. And when you use the fluid medium or a Mod Podge or some other thin adhesive like that, and use a tissue paper, I think my battery died there. The tissue paper, the white parts of it become transparent. So yeah, that's what I was doing. I was trying to get the white parts to be transparent and just have that bit of the writing and stuff, the tissue paper stuff, come up. Now, the second tissue paper I'm using, so the first one was a true like gift wrap tissue paper. I think somebody either gifted me or it came in a package or something. This one is a Tim Holtz product, and it's like called Collage tissue or something. I will link it if I can. It's just, yeah, something I had while I was doing the other one. I was like, hey, I've got some Tim Holtz stuff that would work on here. And that made me think of what's going to end up being the focal on here as well, because it is a Tim Holtz tissue type product. So I've got these neat layers down. They're only going to kind of peek through in the background of this, because the next thing I decided to do was to put down some distress crackle paste, or I think that's what it's called. It's this Distress Crackle Paste. And I'm using this, y'all. I thought it was a palette knife because I just pulled it out of my bin of palette knives. And it's some kind of, yeah, right there is where I realized it's not what it was. It's something from the Dollar Tree. I think it's to help you pull up when you cut vinyl things. And yeah, it was kind of flimsy. It's Dollar Tree. Dollar Tree. Now, I left this crackle paste dry for several hours. I went and ran errands or did something with my husband. I don't even remember what I did, what was going on that day. But I went and did something for quite a few hours and came back, and this crackle was absolutely perfect. So I decided first thing I'm going to do is use some sprays on top of it. I've got a Lindy's like mica spray that was... oh, I think it was cattail copper or something. I will have it below. And then this grayish Distress Oxide spray. Again, I can't think of the name of it. I will put that below in the description box. And also, I sprayed those on there, and then I took a baby wipe and wiped up some of it. So... yeah, and then I was like, well, I want more of these colors on here, so I'm being a little more precise about where they're going and moving them around and giving them a little bit of a chance to dry. And yeah, it's not as much as I want, so I'm going to do it again, put that bit of the brown one down, put a little bit of that gray Distress Oxide down, and do I move it around? Oh, I use my wet paintbrush. Nope. Move it around. And then I'm using a wet baby wipe. So it's it's absorbing it, but not completely. But it did a fantastic job of getting in those crackles and showing them off a bit more. So here's that other Tim Holtz tissue paper that I wanted to use. And it's got like photos in it. And so I was like, oh my gosh, I can use it as a focal. So I'm looking at those ladies there, and then I see the bottom corner one. Yep, that's where I know. So I was like, oh, there's this house here. I could use this house. So indeed, I cut it out, and I'm going to, what am I going to do? I don't know. I'm going to probably grab that fluid matte medium again. And I think I am. I'm real worried about, I think I'm going to use my Ooh glue stick to glue it down because I was real concerned about smearing some, yeah, I'm tapping my fingers there. I was worried about smearing those inks I had put down. So to adhere that house, and y'all see it got all kinds of wonkified on me. So yeah, that wasn't the best method, but it worked. I did it. I will coat the top of it, I believe, with the fluid matte medium. I can make sure that it's that transparent nature that I like. Now, this house feels, yeah, there's that matte medium I'm going to put on there and go over that house. I'm getting ahead of myself. It's what I do. I think ahead of what I'm doing. I can't tell you exactly what I did, but I can tell you what I would probably do when I go and record these. So I'm going to put plenty of that on there, partly to make sure I get that transparent nature. I really like how the crackle like shows through it. And yeah, I love that. But it also helps me make sure that's adhered really well also. So from there, I didn't like how the house was kind of floating. It's super dark at the bottom of that. So I grabbed that Stabilo All Pencil again to kind of put a ground line across it, like, yeah, across the bottom of that photo. And I'm just going to drag it out a little bit to, I don't know, feel like it's anchored to something rather than just floating there in space. It would be a spooky haunted house. Like the actual house is what's haunting, right? It's just floating there. Sorry. That's how my mind works. I'm like, ooh, spooky haunted house. It's the actual house. I am going to ink the edges like I did on the other one, but this time I'm going to use some black soot distress ink because I've got so much of the black going on in there. The brown isn't really showing. It just kind of felt like the right thing to do. So I need a sentiment, and I pulled out these Tim Holtz clippings and almost immediately saw one that says our house, and it was our house period. And in a minute I'm going to cut off the period because I didn't like, I don't know, there was something about why is that a full sentence? So I'm trying to find some other phrase to add to it, so it's not just our house. I will use the Uhu glue stick to stick it down. First, yeah, I'm going to clip off that period because I was like, I don't know if this is exactly how I'm going to use it, and I just didn't like the period there. So I stick that down and I start, I don't know, looking at it, and I really felt like it was incomplete. So I took a piece of some of my scrap paper to my typewriter and wrote, love will always fill. And then, yeah, our house. So I'm inking the edges of that. I've torn it to give it, I don't know, a little bit of interest. And I will use the Uhu glue stick to put it down. And then I'm looking at it and realize that the front porch of that felt really dark. So I grabbed it's a coppery rose gold cheap metallic marker I have and put some hearts there, and then I come back in with a white Signo gel pen and go around them. So again, I'll let you see this one and then we'll get to day 9. So day 9's prompts, Daisy Yellows is potpourri, and the mixed media ICAD prompt is complementary colors, and I had no idea how I would use either one of those. I had this piece of fabric that was sitting on my desk and has quite a bit of purple in it. So I thought, okay, well, let's start with maybe thinking about complementary colors. And that means colors that are across from each other on the color wheel. I think, y'all, I'm not any expert in color theory, but I'm pretty sure that's what complementary colors mean. Since there was purple on that, fabric and it was purple, I went with yellow. So, and this is just some cheap, I think it's called golden straw, and got that on there before it was even dry. I took the Stabilo all pencil and then a couple of shades of brown paint. I think one was a Distress Oxide and one was another Lindy's spray, and sprayed those on there. And now I'm just moving that around. Now, before I made too big of a mess, I am going to dry this. I did add some more pencil scribbles. Now, so that was my idea for this one for potpourri. Potpourri tends to be like a mixed bag. Now, it can be like the smelly stuff that sits in your grandmother's house. But it can also be like a mixed bag of things. If you've ever seen the potpourri category on Jeopardy, that's kind of what I was thinking about, was just a mix of things. So this is my mix of things. It is a wild ride of a card. I love it, but it makes no sense, and I don't know. I think that's why I love it. So I tore that fabric down into 3 strips. Actually 4, because I think I'm going to tear another one here in just a minute, to go across it, thinking, okay, well, maybe that's how I'll leave it. Now, if you can tell the time on this card is what took up most of this video, because it is potpourri all over the place. So I've got that little strip and decided, yep, I'm going to put it there. So I'm going to use my Fabri-Tac, since I am using fabric, to go ahead and get it down on the card. It takes me a minute. That Fabri-Tac moves awful slow in that bottle. I should have sped that part up of all the parts that I didn't speed up. So I'm going to put that down in a little strip. I probably, if I'd known what my next step was going to be, could have just used the Uhu glue stick, but instead, yeah, I went for the Fabri-Tac because I thought, okay, well, I might just add a cinnamon and be done with this. I'm not. No, we're going to take this all crazy, wonky fun. So there's that strip there on the bottom. And I'm making sure I cover up my Fabri-Tac while I come in with my next plan of attack. And that was, I decided to add some black stitches. Now, this is the thread itself, y'all, I believe it is hair weave thread from the Dollar Tree. So it's not one you can pull apart or anything like that. It's almost like the thickness of a crochet thread. But when I found it, I was like, well, there's not much thread at the Dollar Tree. That's kind of interesting. And now it lives on my desk. So I decided to stitch on these long lines of thread down those strips of fabric. Now this, again, like the lavender stitches I did, hold several purposes. It adds some interest, and it also will hold the fabric to the card a little bit better. Sped this up a little bit because I think, oh, I'm looking at the card. I can tell you how many I did. Okay, so that first one I'm doing, I did 4 lines of thread. And then this next one over, I did 3. And then the last one, I did 2 lines of thread. I don't know why. Again, I didn't know, like, what I was going to do with these. I was just like, okay, well, that would be kind of interesting because they each have different amounts. I also made sure I had that strip of fabric there. As you can see on that one, I went kind of like under it to, yeah, I didn't want to stitch over that line. I wanted it to still have its bit of statement over the top of that. So as I was doing that one, I realized, oh my gosh, I can weave in these. Oh, maybe that's what I'll do. That can be super neat and textural. And so, yeah, that's what I'm going to do. But first I was like, let me go ahead and finish this whole idea of doing the 4 3 2 stitches on here and skipping that middle one. Yep. And let's see, and I've, like I said, I've sped this up quite a bit. And if you can see, I am pre-punching some of my holes so that I don't have to kind of search for where I want to go, since I knew exactly the spot I wanted to do for those stitches. And that helps a lot. So here is me weaving a bit of paper, just over, under, across it. And sorry, y'all, I have like a froggy throat, some drippage or something in the back of my throat that's making me all tickly. So I'm sorry if I'm sounding crazy. All right, so that first paper didn't work out. I don't think it was long enough, so I'm trimming down some other papers, going through my scrap bin, trying to figure out what it is would be fun to weave on here. And I definitely wanted pieces that were long enough to go across all of that fabric. Sorry. Oh my gosh. And I thought this black piece would be really interesting. It's got some like coppery, I think foundry wax on it. And I'm going to just start weaving with that piece of map. There's a bit of a notebook paper with some handwriting on it. And I'm even going to bring in, I think, some thread of some kind. Actually, I think, has one of them fallen out on me? We'll have to see in the pictures. Yeah, there's something there I'm adding. Oh, and you know what I think that is? I think that is, I don't know what that is, y'all. I don't know. It's some kind of something, possibly some wax linen cord or something. So just above it, I've got some embroidery floss on a thread. You can see it's fairly long, so I'm going to do several passes of it. I don't know what you call it. My weaving terms are not great. So, but having it on this big doll needle made it so much easier to just go back and forth on it. And I've not tied any of this in any way. It's all just kind of sitting there. Yep. So I'm going to finish this one off. I don't know how many passes that was, but I'll trim it. And then I've got that piece of black that I'm going to do the weaving for it. And then once I get those done, I decide, since I don't have anything tied off or glued or anything like that, pulled out my tiny attacher, which I hardly ever use. And yeah, I'm doing a lot of things I never do. And go ahead and just staple some of those papers, especially right in place, so that they don't go slipping around on me later. I thought I was going to also, did I staple the other side? No. Yeah, I was like, I thought I didn't. No. So once that is done, I kind of look at it and I'm like, well, let's go ahead and add a sentiment. And let's see, what do I do next? I thought that's what I did. I'm going to look at it for a while, y'all. And then I'm finally going to decide that what I need to do is ink the edges of this card. And I'm going to do that with some of my distress ink and walnut stain. And looking at that now, I don't know why I made that choice. Seeing as I had so much black on there, normally I would go with a black on there, but I guess I wanted this to feel a bit more aged and not just framed up. So it was time for a sentiment. Y'all, I looked at sentiments for a long time and I kept coming back to this idea of this being kind of just crazy and weird and scattered in space. And for some reason, this phrase came to me, which is we are all made of stardust and rainbows. So I know that we are all made of stardust is I can't remember who it comes from, maybe Carl Sagan or something like that. But I like the addition of the and rainbows because I've got so many colors packed on here that it really feels just like scattered and floating in space but brought together with a bit of rainbow, and I don't know. It just felt right. So I'm going to ink that up also with that walnut stain distress ink. Goodness gracious. And then glue it down with my Oohoo glue stick. Once I get that down, it's going to hit me that I really needed this to feel. I mean, you could feel the rainbow portion of this because there's so many colors kind of scattered all over it, but you weren't really feeling the stardust portion of it. So I needed some sparkle on here. And I grabbed my gold embroidery floss. This is a DMC Dynamite or Diane. Oh, y'all, I can never get it right. I'll have a link to it. Floss that I am going to do some really messy French knots all over this card. So, and this, again, the stitching is not just about the stitching. It also is adding the security to these woven pieces that I've added on here. So I'm going to make sure I hit most of the papers on there, and that will help secure them outside of just the staples I've added. So I have sped this up quite a bit. I've mentioned French knots before. Oh, and I was finding too that the places that I didn't have a second layer of card, I was not having as the card was tearing, so I couldn't get an adequate French knot. So I was having to be really careful about how I did it and not make my holes too big. So a French knot is done. You pull your thread through, you wrap that thread around your needle several times like that, and then you reinsert your needle into your surface slightly off from your original hole, and you will hold your thread. So here I'm holding it in that left hand as you pull it through. Now that was one of my super sloppy ones. It's okay, I kind of love it. It's kind of that scattered stardust scattered feeling to me. So you'll see a few more of these. If you do want to see these slower, you can use that little cog thing, I think, on YouTube to slow the video down. But it's a pretty common embroidery stitch. So, at some point I decided that the blue was just too much for me. All right, so there I'm pulling it through. Let's see if I can explain it again, because I know I've got a few more I'm going to add. So I come up through here, I wrap it around my needle, I reinsert it. I'm holding in my left hand. I said maybe that wasn't the best example. I will hold it tight as I pull it down so that the thread doesn't get too wily. So there I'm holding it in my left hand, and then when I get pretty close to pulling it all the way through, I let go with my left hand. So this, it's one of those things. It's just a nice little scattering. French knots to me they could feel like stars, but to me a lot of times they feel like little rosebuds or something. But for this, in my head, they were stars. So I am finally going to tie this off as best I can, and then I'm going to use a little bit of masking tape to just go over where some of my knots are. I may have to put something better down. I'm sitting here looking at this card and I'm like, this masking tape is coming off, so I may have to glue it down with something else. And with that, I think that is all of my cards, y'all. Maybe I don't know that I add anything else. So, I'm going to give you looks at all three of these cards. If you like this, you know what to do. I hope I've inspired you to go and grab your art supplies and just get intuitive and make something. let me know which one of these three was your favorite, and I will see y'all again soon with more arty goodness. Thanks for watching. Bye.